When we speak of the various crises that are being experienced by the earth at this time, most people think of global warming, they think of various fuel supplies, and they may even think of water shortages and deforestation. But in the common solutions to these things, the average person does not think simply about things like gardening and farming. But because plant life plays such a major role in feeding humanity in their agrarian pursuits, it should be noted that plant life, whether on the earth, as in soil or above water, or whether actually in the ocean, is a major part of the solution for humanity's current crisis of global warming, and for feeding humanity and eliminating hunger, famine, and by and large, poverty. But when people think of this, it is not just cutting down fewer trees and eating less meat. It is about the techniques and methods used for farming and for even gardening on a small scale. And we mention gardening specifically because farming is what it is by and large in the developed world. It has become an industrial pursuit, and it is pursued with monocrops and with fewer and fewer species and varieties being used to feed a ever-growing population. This is a recipe for absolute disaster in the long term. It may give you temporary results that seem positive, but this just is not the proper way for mankind to proceed. First, it is a problem that you are removing so much in the line of trees. For when you remove the trees, which is a major issue, you also, in the destruction of that forest, remove the undergrowth. You also destroy the habitat for the animals that live there, the insects and various other life forms. Play a pivotal role in the balance of your overall ecology. And that balance is important in many ways. Not to mention just the simple fact that that balance is part of what keeps you from having diseases run rampant. You are at the moment experiencing a pandemic. And it is true that this is in part a result of mankind's encroachment upon environmental factors that has allowed disease to move from one life form to humanity. But this is not the first time this has happened, nor is it the last time. And this is a rather minor issue compared to what will come if you continue to encroach upon natural habitat. That aside, why do we speak of gardening as well as farming? Because gardening done in a varied environmental planting schedule with actually non-modified seeds or plants using heirloom varieties can enhance the resilience of the plant life upon which mankind currently is dependent for survival. While doing this, it will also strengthen and continue to provide greater variety. Strengthen, we say, meaning that it will enhance the survivability of the seeds and thus the plants. So, when you look at the world overall, you must understand that farming, done as it is on an industrial basis, depletes water supplies, damages the land. Just think, the Dust Bowl and great dust storms in the United States of the past century were caused by inappropriate farming. And instead of curing the terrible farming techniques, what you have done is found a way to mitigate the problem that actually in the long term causes another great problem. For you are depleting the water sources now of the same area where you caused the dust storms. These areas should have been allowed to remain in a grass-like state. And then instead of stripping them, you could have drilled small areas within the grass that would have been enough to allow plants to grow, and have actually planted in those small areas. The grass would have maintained the soil integrity, and your crops would have grown fine. And you may say, oh, that is too laborious, but with your modern machinery, it would be even easier than it was for the Native Americans. For it is simple for you to have a machine that simply pulls out a plug of grass and soil, plants a seed, and allows new topsoil to be placed in over that seed. And this would allow you still to have your rows that you use for easy harvesting. It would provide you protection from the loss of moisture, and it would continue to maintain the integrity of the soil. But no, you would rather plow up huge areas, allow the soil's integrity to be broken down, allow the soil to be carried off by the wind, and then in order to enhance a little bit of what is left, you will draw upon the water supply to water vast areas that otherwise would not need to be watered, and use huge quantities of artificial fertilizer because you have stripped the nutrients from the soil by the very treatment you have used to till it and plow it. But farming is not limited to soil. There are many things that can be provided by water areas. Notice we say water areas and not simply the ocean, for there is some understanding of ocean farming, but it is minimal at the moment. But there are opportunities for freshwater farming. There are opportunities for farming in streams and even ponds. And that farming can be very varied, for it can be various species of fish, it can be species of other aquatic animals, and various plant life that is more nutritious than most of what is eaten by humanity at the moment. You would think, the way humanity is focusing, that there are candy corn plants and that anything more nutritious must be artificial. That isn't the way it works. The truth is that industrial farming has its place, but it must be changed. The way you do it is wrong. And the monoculturing is also an issue. But you can take the seeds that you use for monoculture planting and mingle them with a few heirloom variety seeds and with other sufficiently potent varieties that you use to monoculture, so they alternate in planting. This will keep you from suffering the problems which require insecticides and various herbicides, and will be much beneficial for humanity and the environment. And let's look at what you are destroying as well. For you think in terms of open fields and vast areas that you can work. Yet understand that each part of the environment, the forest, the fields, the hedgerows, the areas where things meet, all provide part of what is needed for the overall health. So now, back to why we mentioned gardening as well as farming. Why would we mention small-scale gardening? Because we have already spoken to you about the idea of architecture and of buildings replacing the plant life that they are displacing. And in that very prospect, you can allow buildings to produce gardens as well as ornamental plant growth. And gardens do not have to be traditional things where you walk in between rows, but rather can be plants that grow together, where they are simple and easy to reach when used on a small scale basis. So you have taller plants to the center and smaller plants to the side, and one individual can take a small area, a very small area, and grow a substantial amount of food in that area. Even a dedicated area on a balcony that is simply perhaps a meter by a meter. You would think that such would be obvious, but you have just left so much common sense behind. And as a result of the way you are now farming, you drain water tables, and when you drain water tables, you cause problems not only just of drought, but of supply for humanity. And water is fast becoming a major issue for much of humanity. Just to have clean water for cooking, drinking, bathing, how should that be such a problem? You think you have a great population on this earth, but your population is very small, considering what the earth could support. Your population is too great for the earth because of greed and massive misuse of resources. So this is to tell you that you need to consider and use your technology in this consideration a new way of farming that actually works with the earth rather than against the earth. And gardening on a small scale to make sure that in every environment there is maintained an adequate variety for the small-scale farming, even for the people who fail in their attempts, will add to the environmental diversity. And that is important in the survival of the earth itself. The greatest injury has been as a result of the misguided use of monoculture. And this has, due to its draining of nutrients from the earth, been a large part of what has caused the continued deforestation as you seek more and more land to farm. Now, another issue in this very topic of deforestation is the amount of meat that is eaten by individuals. And the fact that you do not simply hunt meat, you grow meat in an industrial way. And yet, you claim that you care about life. Now, when you industrially farm animals, You injure life. It is with this in mind, though, that people want cheap meat, and forests are being cut down so cattle can be grazed. Yet, what is happening? Is it benefiting in the long term? A farm will be there 50, maybe 100 years. All of the damage that has been done will continue. But the farm will become useless. So you move on and you destroy more. And soon the earth is a virtual Easter island. How do you think these things happen? That is a small example of what can happen on a larger scale. But you do not have to worry about this. For if you do not amend your ways, the earth will survive. The problem is, you won't. We leave you with blessings and with peace. Peace be with each of you.